So what kind of controversy should I put on the thumbnail for this week? Like we're talking like maximum clickbait. What are we talking about right now? Because if I look at like at least the subreddit, it feels like there's just a dumpster fire of stuff between the last time we talked. So like whose face do we put on the thumbnail for maximum clicks?
Why don't we combine all of the controversy into one?
So like a photo of Vlad physically harming a Pure while
ESL
in Saudi Arabia.
Abortion?
Oh,
question mark?
That I didn't even think about that. Okay, so pure Saudi Arabia Vlad fetus together.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that, but
Pure
maybe
loves Russia and hates abortion with multiple exclamation marks and question marks.
Is it point or mark? Is there a right answer to that? Do you say point? You corrected yourself to say mark. Okay, that's not important.
No, I said question mark and exclamation points.
Fine.
I think.
Dude, I don't even know where to begin. You know I did that thing. Sometimes this happens to me where about 2 days, about 48 hours out from recording, it's like Saturday, and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, we're gonna do a podcast in a couple days. There's like not much to talk about. What we're gonna do, and then suddenly, well, bam, that problem solved.
Yeah. Okay. One at a time. The player Pure, part of the Virtus Pro organization, an organization that has already been in hot water when it comes to their stance on the Ukraine invasion by Russia. They've been pretty honestly, their PR is incredibly bad. It is amazing how bad of a job they've done. Like, like whatever, like you're owned by some oligarch who is like buddies with Putin. Like, that's going to be hard to get around, but like somehow they made it like 10 times worse by being like, oh, cancel culture. I mean, like, anytime you've got Demon on your side of the argument, when he's jumping in and being like, yo, you guys are right, you probably have done a bad job with your PR. So the fact that they've just been all like, anything against us is Russophobic or cancel culture and that sort of stuff is absolutely amazing. So this is an organization that has already been in hot water that like it's hard to feel sympathetic for at all, right? Because I'm sure there's some people a part of the organization that like do support Ukraine, like you can't just paint a broad brush across everybody in this organization is against Ukraine, like I'm sure that, but it's hard to be sympathetic when they do shit like that, But
Cap, we're not talking about VP, we're talking about Outsiders, the team that is definitely not VP affiliated at all.
Yeah.
So I feel like your whole point is like a little bit moot because they're not the same team. Their logos aren't the same thing. Their Twitter account isn't really the same. The players aren't the same across multiple games. Like it's different people. So we should really focus on Outsiders who are no longer in the DPC and were disqualified.
Yes, easy mistake to make. Of course, Virtus Pro has been doing free PR for this new organization called Outsiders. They've been very supportive of them. Great to see. Very, very brotherly, really trying to help them out purely for, good intentions. I'm sure there's no tie between these two. Yeah, it just seems like Virtus Pro is just like, oh yeah, like, like how orgs are like, oh, and here's our female like team, like I think somebody just announced like Javelins or something like that. And it was like their female Valorant team or something like that. It's like Virtus Pro is just like, yeah, this is our new brand team called Outsiders. Buy an Outsiders shirt now. Like, it's so fucking weird. I don't know how they're getting away with this. There must be some sort of like communication between the orgs and rules setting, because like I'm just watching Virtus Pro do all of the stuff for outsiders, so like it really doesn't feel like there's much of a change between the two whatsoever. But
Nope.
That aside, they've just done a really bad job of handling all this, and are not making any fans. And
they're probably making a very few select fans. Like
true. Maybe they're maybe they're getting the fans exactly the kind of fans that they want. But so they've already had bad precedent, bad PR. They've been in hot water for a long time. It's hard to be sympathetic towards them. And then their player, during an official DPC match, writes a Z on the minimap very intentionally. Nobody say this is an accident. It was so clear that it was intentional. You can look at the replay. He even like redid the bottom line again. He intentionally wrote a Z, which if you have paid at all attention, is just basically the go-to symbol to support Russia at this point.
it's close to a modern day swastika.
Yeah, it's like if you were supportive of Germany in World War II, then you probably would, throw down a swastika somewhere. This is similar in the regard of it's a symbol just saying like, hey, I support this sort of thing. And his team immediately scribbled it out. And
except for someone who tipped him.
DM tipped him. And we'll talk about DM in a second because he has a follow-up to this whole thing. And yeah, he does that in an official DPC match. They get called out for it, and BTS sends some emails with Valve, and apparently Valve comes back and says, okay, these guys should be disqualified, because that's what BTS did. They disqualified them, and I can't imagine BTS is making those kind of shots without Valve's approval. As pretty much any tournament organizer right now, when it comes to the DPC, it's like you want to get Valve's approval for this sort of stuff. So Outsiders forfeits their DPC matches and is kicked out. We don't know what the long-term results of this. All we know is that they got kicked out of this tournament. We don't know if they're banned from future DPCs or what, but for now, that has been the fallout.
Can I just light addendum that they did this in a match where they were playing Ukrainian players?
Oh yeah. I mean that's another little bit of context added in there.
You don't need the context. It's still atrocious without it, but just
it's
just
still
a little
bad without it. Chances are, like, no matter what team they're facing up against, there's probably going to be a Ukrainian player. But yeah, this is a specifically Ukrainian team, and that happens. They get bounced out. They do an apology, not apology. They do. I'm sorry if I offended anyone.
This
apology.
was like Logan Paul PewDiePie-esque apology. Like
that was an accident, and I'm sorry if it offended anybody. It's like, okay, well then you aren't claiming any responsibility whatsoever. You're saying that like, I just randomly drew a Z. Sorry if you were offended by my accidental drawing. Definitely didn't mean to do that, which you definitely obviously did.
Pro tip.
And even if you didn't mean to, your team clearly saw it as a Z and crossed it out. So there was immediately a feedback from, let's say we live in this fucking happy doopy world where you just accidentally draw a fucking Z. Oh, whoops.
You don't do that? You don't do that?
He immediately gets the feedback loop from his own team that like, hey, that was fucked up. Don't do that. That was the wrong thing to do. He immediately gets that feedback loop. So like he, from then on out, knows that his actions were wrong. And they only do this "I'm sorry if you were offended, it was an accident" thing after they get called out for it. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's just so fucking unbelievable, honestly. What is wrong with fucking these orgs and these teams? Like, Jesus Christ. And it's the org's fault too. It's the org's fault too, because everything that we've seen from the culture that is coming out of the Virtus Pro organization, I almost guarantee that they did not have a talk with their players about like, hey, here's what you shouldn't be doing any of these sorts of things. Like, no matter how edgy your sense of humor is or whatever, like, stay away from any of these things. Don't write a Z anytime soon. Don't be talking about Ukraine at all, period. Don't be talking about wars generally, just like across the board. Don't be talking about shit. Don't talk about World War II. Don't talk about any of this stuff. Under no circumstances should you be talking about any of this, and here's why. There's no way this organization did something like that.
I would love to see the PowerPoint of that presentation, because like from working with a team, if I had to go meet with players or someone in the org did, there would be like, like a deck and like a meeting, like, hey, everybody, we're going to have like an educational moment. And you're right, there's no way VP/Outsiders did this, but the idea of what that deck would have to look like is very funny to me.
Yeah.
No Z's. Man, it's... Pro tip for anybody who needs to apologize for literally anything ever, even if you don't mean it, you have to actually say sorry or I apologize to kind of start with it. And as soon as that isn't the first thing that Pure is saying in this... It was physically uncomfortable for me to watch his apology. Not even in like a, oh, this is like fucked up way, like I'm getting some kind of like fucked up enjoyment out of it. I got negative enjoyment out of it. It was cringy and uncomfortable for me to look at this teenager go, yeah, hey everybody, my bad, I guess. You should be less sensitive. Dude, what an absolute shit show.
Yeah.
And it's right.
This is an 18-year-old kid who has had zero professional history. The Virtus Pro is his first big team. It's his first like team, period. Right? It's his first like actual like trying to make money team. This is a huge opportunity for him. And he immediately shits the bed. In very good comparison to that Russian kid who's in some sort of sporting event. I think it was like go-karting or something like that, who did the German salute, the whole Heil Hitler sort of thing. Yeah, he did that on the prize stand. Immediately got shit canned for doing something like that. Absolutely insane. So pretty bonkers that something like that happens. They get kicked out, and then DM, who we mentioned earlier, is the one who tipped, tipped
his teammate.
Pure.
His teammate, yeah.
Yeah, and I like whatever that tip means. It's whatever. Like I think it's too far of a stretch to say he's supportive or thought it was funny or something like that. Tipping can be like a broad spectrum of why you tip somebody. But he did tweet out, Dear Valve, he added Valve and added Dota 2. On behalf of myself and my teammates, I would like to kindly ask you to reconsider your recent decision on our disqualification from the DPC tournament. Please let us compete and prove being one of the strongest teams in Eastern Europe region in front of our fans from all over the globe with honor. Honesty, and dignity. Don't ruin our careers just because of some stupid random action by an 18-year-old boy.
Random?
We just want to do the only thing we love in this life, play Dota. Okay. So, yeah, you've already pointed out the problems with this statement, okay? If DM wants to have that kind of statement, then he needs to be able to separate himself from Pure's actions and say, hey, don't punish the rest of us for something he did. But you also have to say what he did is wrong. But it doesn't seem like he's doing any of that. He's not saying what he did was wrong. And he's not saying, he calls it stupid actions. Like that's the most like negative that he puts on this. But he doesn't actually like fully say, hey, this was totally wrong. I understand why this was wrong. You know, here's the reasons. And like he deserves a punishment, but the rest of us don't. Like he's saying all of us, no, don't ban us. Let all of us play. You know, it was just a stupid thing. Let's just play Dota. And that just like it's so funny. Please do PR for these guys. Like it's incredible. It's incredible how bad it is.
If you really felt that way about your teammate and he was really an outlier and you really are worried about your career, I find it hard to believe that the action isn't kick this person off Outsiders / definitely not Virtus Pro, and instead everybody who wants to still have a career leaves, potentially together. You can play Dota as U4 or U3, find someone else, maybe get re-signed to a different org sometime soon if you're actually that good. But like that's the play here. The play isn't we kicked this guy, we're still okay, especially if you're not condemning him. The play is hard condemn and peace the fuck out. And that's not what they're doing. And, you know, even if you give them the slightest benefit of the doubt, that they're not sure what's best with contracts or their careers, like they're not showing any level of remorse that I think is appropriate in the situation, which makes me feel like all of them are equally shitty. Maybe not equally. All of them are a little less shitty than Pure, but like there is a collective level of culpability.
I mean, we just haven't heard from the other teammates. For example, GPK somewhere in a Twitch chat, it was screenshotted saying looking for team, and I think he said specified Europe or something like that. You know, it's like so. You know, say if some of the other people just don't want to say anything about this, I kind of understand. Maybe they think they just keep a low profile. Maybe that's the best thing for them. And like before anybody says like, oh, well, they can't go against Russia, you can't go with Putin. Like there are ways for you to be able to say, hey, this was a stupid action without explicitly stating that you support Ukraine. You know, there are definitely ways to be able to do that, but there doesn't seem to be any of that whatsoever. You know, you can do the things that some people do, which is like we've seen from some Russian players and orgs where it's like, we stand for peace. You know, we just want to have peace anywhere. We don't want to have war anywhere. You know, like you can do broad statements like that, which is like, okay, we kind of get where you're going with this. We understand that like it's unreasonable for me to ask you to directly say, Putin, go fuck yourself. You know, it's like that's unreasonable for me to ask. But like, man.
Can I make a request real quick for a reprieve from the conversation before we probably get to more icky conversation? Are you surprised at all that Bet Boom, formerly known as Windstrike, were the people who came out on top of this event? Can we read much into this? Extremely surprised. Because they were the Division 2 team before the season started.
Yes.
It's a Sineko's team.
Yeah, I probably would have expected CIS Rejects to be the team out of the two Division 2 teams to do well. I really like Sineko. I'm not that I know him very well, but it's like everything that I've seen from him, I respect him a lot as a player and a captain. And it's maybe I'm not like maybe extremely surprised is a little bit too far, but just in general, I am a little suspicious that we are actually getting the best of the Eastern European teams going to the major. Not necessarily Bet Boom themselves. They seem like they're definitely in that top 3.
They did beat Spirit.
They beat Spirit, and Spirit themselves said like that's the thing. It's like Spirit kind of like EG, like they at the start of a tournament, they like TI itself, right? TI itself, the big tournament that they won, they did not start well, right? They looked like a middle to lower team after day one. but by the end of groups, they looked much better. And so like the very first match that they play is against Spirit, which they win 2-1. Spirits themselves say we played like shit, and we realized we needed to like level up our game. Spirit went on to 2-0 everybody else after that. So, I think there is some legitimacy to what they're saying there. Mm-hmm. And then they went on to beat Na'Vi 2-1 and Mind Games 2-0. So I think BetBoom is definitely in the top 3. But the other team that does make me a bit questioning is Mind Games, who basically got in off of being able to... They were in a triple elimination and only had to win 2 matches. That's how the dice kind of rolled for them, because they got all of the outsiders DQ matches.
Mm. They Mind Games beat PuckChamp in their first round, and then got the DQ win over Outsiders, which put them in the upper bracket final. And because there were 3 teams, you're right, it was basically triple elimination. So they played the upper bracket final, they lost. The lower bracket final, they lost. And then the 3rd slot decider final, which they won against CIS Rejects.
Well, and they also got another DQ win over Outsiders.
Oh, I didn't know
in the 3rd place decider. So they had 2 matches that were decided by Outsiders DQ. So they go and face up against CIS Rejects. CIS Rejects managed to beat Na'Vi. So again, I thought CIS Rejects, out of the 2 of them, that I thought CIS Rejects were likely to make it. So I'm a little suspicious. I would not be surprised if we saw at least one of these teams like flop out of the major and be last place. Just because all of the circumstances going on with Eastern Europe right now, I question whether or not like teams were at full strength for that qualifier and stuff like that. So
absolutely, I think you have to consider all that. And we know now for sure that while we have those 3 teams going, the 4 Chinese teams will not be going. They'll be playing a separate tournament, and the groups will go from 9 to 7, and it'll still be TI adjacent, except with only 1 team being eliminated in the groups.
Yeah. Which also resulted in, it's a little bit of inside scoop, that also resulted in a change up of the schedule. Obviously, with less teams, there are less matches, and with less matches means less talent were needed. So I believe a pair of talent were cut after they had been hired. So that's unfortunate.
Oh, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
For like a couple reasons. That doesn't feel good at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't really blame ESL.
But there's no way.
It came from Valve, and Valve's like, okay, we're changing this. We're changing the schedule. Here's the new thing,
But
so
that probably implies that Valve took budget away because of the change. Because why, if your total, I feel like they can't take money away after the contract, and if they're taking,
or it just means that there's not enough matches for all these casters, right?
But then still you should pay them.
They have hired a lot of talent.
Okay,
they have hired a lot of talent.
But the talent reveal sheet I saw was like 5 people 2 months ago.
There's some more people being added to that still. Boy, when I finally get to talk about this, it just gets worse and worse every time, Joey. Every week. I finally got an email today about what I'm going to be doing at the major after asking for like the last month and a half, 2 months. It's been ridiculous. So I'm just going to go there and do the best job that I can, and maybe the product's gonna suck, but it is what it is.
You're gonna do a great job, and people are gonna like the product.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll
Good
see.
Vibes.
All my demands have gone out the window at this point in time. I said, like, okay, you want me to do this? Here's the things that I need, and none of those things are happening. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go.
Someone's not getting their green M&Ms in the dressing room. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where are my green M&Ms? God damn it.
So to get back on the train of Eastern Europe and people being questionable about it. The last probably 24 hours now have been a really hotbed of conversations regarding Vlat on Reddit particularly.
Okay, you probably know more about this than I do, because I saw the Reddit thread that did not get deleted. And I kind of read it and I was just like, okay, whatever. I just don't care.
So this is really hard to parse for me. This is really hard to parse. My understanding, and a like big asterisk, like grain of salt, second information. My interpretation is that Vlat, while very publicly calling for Pure's condemnation, may have not great takes on Russia himself from a Ukrainian perspective, that may be falling in the extremist bucket. That may or may not include genocide-related thoughts.
Oh, okay.
I'm laughing.
That is indeed extreme.
I'm laughing because I'm a little uncomfortable because, again, full picture not fully understood, because trying to parse this information was very tough. And especially if I don't talk a lot about the Reddit modding stuff on the show because I think it's like really stupid. And I don't like to take credit for it because I really don't do that much. But occasionally, I think instances like this is when it's like a really prime example to have some humans making some judgment calls about threads. And I think that this is one of the first times that I have so blatantly thought that there was a thread being influenced by outside sources, not like in a traditional brigading sense, like I'm Mason and I don't like a Reddit thread and I'm watching it on stream and I'm telling all my audience to go downvote it, right? Like that happens. But this felt like the stuff that you hear talk about on the news of like there's a farm of people at computers with accounts creating like disinformation and shit talking people. Because if you look in that thread, which is still up, and I really don't know if that is or isn't the right call still, moderation is an imperfect art, there is so many comments, an obtusely large amount of comments compared to normal threads in general, but also just right there. Also, if you're looking at the accounts,
see 1,400 comments.
That's a fuck ton.
That it's like top, like that is like the biggest threads that like
probably
DOTA
in a month. Yeah, that's probably the most comments in like a month ish.
The all-time list, I'm looking at it right now: 1,200 comments, 5,300 comments, 750 comments, 3,200 comments. This is way above normal.
Way above normal for a thread.
The biggest threads of all time, upvote wise.
And again, that's the comments, not the upvotes, right? But like when you look in them for the ones that aren't deleted, that you can still see. I think we removed like a fuck ton of them. But so many, I would say probably 60% of the posts in there were from accounts that don't have flares. That's a red flag. Most people on the subreddit who use it regularly have some kind of hero flare. Most posts were in very broken English, which is another red flag, because while we do get people from, as English second language, Eastern European communities, like generally it's not in that mass quantity. A lot of people aggressive against Ukraine in the comments in like a lot of different ways, both like in attempts to be funny and like just like outwardly like suggesting that Nazis are there. And looking through it was like, holy shit, I think this is like being targeted by some network to help create misinformation, which made the analysis of like what is good or bad about Vlat, the conversation starter of the post, even more confusing. Very, very hard to parse.
Okay, can we start? What is the thread? What is the thread about? Because we haven't actually said that, and I'm still a little questionable on it.
The thread is about how Vlat was condemning Pure on Twitter for the Z thing that we were talking about earlier, while at the same time on Instagram posting a picture that is believed to be reminiscent of like Nazism because of the image of the two milks or beverages.
Yeah, it looks
in
like
his
he's got
shopping
two
cart.
juices and a yogurt next to each other, and basically the combined lettering of the three of them, it links to an article of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. What the fuck? What?
Yeah. Yep. So
Is this obscure knowledge, or is this like... Because this is one of those things that, like, I literally don't know enough that I do question, like, was this intentional? Was there, like, did Vlad write something that definitely made it clear that this was intentional? Like, just because, what is this? What is this?
It's his grocery shopping.
Division famous or something? Like, what?
Yeah. The people in the comments were mentioning that, like, you know, he has been very publicly right-leaning and very anti-Russia, and it's like a continuation of a thread of opinions that he's had, but like I don't have the references for all the other opinions that would validate those claims, right? It seems to be public information, but without like, I feel like I need a YouTube video essay for someone to sit down and like go through the facts with me to make an opinion, because I'm not qualified to do it, which makes the thread that much more confusing.
Yeah. So the pure thing I have an opinion on, because it involved Dota. This, I feel like, lightly involves Dota because Vlad is a Dota commentator, but nothing else outside of that involves Dota. And I saw this and I was just like, okay, yeah, Vlad might have some fucked up views, but like, I don't care enough to engage, because it's not like I'm like real close with Vlad or something like that. Like, we talk very, very rarely at events. And that's the extent of my... So it was just pretty much like, oh, okay, whatever. And I just moved on with my life.
It now wouldn't be surprising if, like, in another period of time, something even more condemning goes out, and then you're like, okay, there really is, like, a pattern here. Maybe we should consider this person's position if they're, like, advocating for really horrible things. But until that happens, I think it's still hard to really put your chips somewhere in the whole conversation. And I think it's just left a lot of people confused more than anything else. But I do think that my takeaway of the most interesting thing is that I think that thread was targeted by misinformation.
That is pretty
people.
interesting.
Yeah. Which is wild. Our little nugget of community, you know? You know, you don't think about Dota like you would think about politics per se, right? But
that is how, I mean, I think that's how you exert the most influence, like, directly on people, is these more niche communities, right? It's also where, like, local city subreddits and stuff like that, I think are more likely to influence people's opinions on things like that. So I guess in some regards, it does make sense. And Dota 2 is still probably one of the larger subreddits in the whole Reddit.
It is. I mean, there's a million people who follow it, right? Even if those are dead accounts. I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
Last week we had a conversation that you framed as highly hypothetical, and I was like engaging, and like I was engaging in good faith and just like theory crafting and thinking about what, you know, I would do in this situation personally regarding, you know, Saudi Arabia and work and how to do that. And then in the middle of the week, I was fucking taken. I almost fell out of my goddamn seat because because I saw this news about Gamers Without Borders, which is like a $4 million ESL Saudi Arabia tournament. And then I saw that there was like a Team Liquid post about it, and like people were confused and interested. And it doesn't feel very hypothetical 1 week later, sir.
Yes. I'm sure you were very surprised to know what I was talking about, that it wasn't entirely hypothetical.
Shocked!
Given the extra information you added to the hypothetical that I didn't even give up. I'm sure you were totally surprised. So yeah, Gamers Without Borders, it's a charity event that is obviously linked to Saudi Arabia. I actually worked the previous one. Didn't really have too many moral qualms with it. But what I did realize 3 years later, I think at this point or something like that, was that like if I was going to do it, I do need to extract more money out of it. Because like I shouldn't be doing my regular day rate for something like this. There should definitely be a premium. And I believe I asked for too much, so I'm probably not going to be doing it, but it's okay with me. So nobody take this if they see me not working it. Don't take it as a moral stand. There are some people who declined it purely off of moral grounds that they weren't going to do it, period. I had no problem with it. It was I just realized that I should be asking more money for it. So
I think that's
didn't get it. We'll see who they hire for it.
Based on like WWE and F1 and the money that they pay out for those kind of things and their performers and their talent. Like, I think that there's a lot of parity to that and esports because it's a very targeted, you've mentioned the term, I believe just taught to me the idea of sports washing, right? So,
it's very clearly one of those things, right? It's a charity event. That's the best example of sports washing that there can be.
So people are spending a lot of money, so get the money if possible. And again, like I wasn't in your exact situation, but just to kind of align with you a little bit, like there's a price, and I do tremendously respect people who would say no just for the sake of saying no, but there's surely a price. What was interesting is that there wasn't a lot of talk about it too much, with the exception of, I believe, the Team Liquid post on the situation made some waves, specifically in the DOTA subreddit. There's a lot of people talking about it. There was people bringing up Aiden and Sania's personal family history, which could be a little bit morally quandarsome with the government over there. I don't know how much I want to / can say, since I do know a little bit more than the average cat behind the scenes, at least from a Liquid perspective. But what was your take on at least that messaging?
The Liquid put out basically a post, and if I recall, you guys basically said that you weren't going to restrict your teams from doing it, but you would leave it by a team-by-team basis, and pretty much just I saw some people, I feel like you guys got a lot of praise for it, where at the same time there was other people who were like, this is a whole lot of nothing, and I kind of agree with both.
I do too,
in the fact that I think that the statement was very realistic in that we stand for certain things, and some of these things are contradictory to the people and places that this is tied to, but we do need to operate within this space, and so we're not going to ban our teams from being a part of it, and we're going to leave it up to them. And I saw Richard Lewis said something about how the messaging was very different from was it Steve, your other CEO?
Yep.
And his tweet about Texas versus Liquid's tweet about this, which I mean, pretty big difference between a company talking about countries and organizations which they are going to do business with versus a personal take against a state within which you live. I don't know. I think those things are different. It makes sense that the messaging would be different. So Yeah, I feel like you guys got like a little bit too much praise, but I do understand the statement. It was like very realistic. I thought it was like very apt. It's like, yeah, this is a global economy. All this money is dirty money.
The Richard Lewis thing, is really hard for me because I both agree with what he's saying, but like disagree with some of the venom behind it. Because like what he's saying is true. So like the context, at the LCS spring playoffs, which was last week, 2 weeks ago in Texas, all of the teams from that were there, 100 Thieves, EG, and Liquid, Riot offered them basically like a 90-second slot on the broadcast, both in the arena and online. And Liquid said, hey, like, we acknowledge that right now Texas, especially in relation to LGBT trans laws and in addition to abortion, we don't really like agree with what's going on here, and we want to do something about it and tell our fans like, hey, we hear you if you're here, and think that there's like some fucked up stuff going on. So we did that. We created a video message. We donated like 30% of our winnings and like all of our sales from the event like to the ACLU Texas, right? I personally made the video. I wrote it. I was really proud that we like did something.
That was a good video. Yeah.
Thank you. And it clearly is in some light opposition to the stance on Saudi Arabia, which is, hey, this ESL deal is real. There's going to potentially be more tournaments there, and we think that we can't just outright bar our players from not competing in them for a couple reasons. One, it's probably disadvantageous to the players. Two, if you have players who you don't allow to compete in events, suddenly they might not want to play for your team anymore, and you might have a hard time getting other players to play for your team because their moral standards might be different than yours. And also, like, as a business, it's hard to start to turn away tournaments for any amount of moral quandary, because then if you're not playing in tournaments, what are you doing anymore as a team? It's a real slippery slope.
And once you start down that road, it is a pretty slippery slope, because once you decline Saudi Arabia, then you probably also start declining China events, and yeah, it starts getting real messy. And then the obvious, like, what about America question comes into play, like, yeah, so and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
So
I think it's pretty realistic.
I feel good that I genuinely think that we are thinking about this, we being Team Liquid, and I don't even want to co-opt credit too much, if at all, for it, but like we're thinking about this. We're thinking about how it impacts players and the community that we have and want to build, and we're being upfront about it. And also we are trying to activate in other areas that are potentially more targeted, like the ACLU of Texas, like the League of Legends finals, to do something. And naturally what comes up in the thread in response to people who are like critics of that is the response of like, well, why you're doing something, but clearly you're not doing enough because you're not taking like a hard stand and boycotting or doing whatever. And it's hard for me to read that stuff as someone who is like politically active but also works for the company, and not get like a little bit heated deep down, because it's a question of like, fuck man, we're doing something. And I think something is better than nothing, but you're being upset at me for not doing everything.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something to take to my therapist, but like that's a hard one for me to stand by and watch.
I mean, didn't we talk about this last time?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in a bunch of different ways, right? Yeah.
Did you read that article? The Copenhagen interpretation of ethics, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, it's frustrating that, but I kind of get why some people are like very sensitive to the idea of virtue signaling. But that also implies that I think virtue signaling implies that you are doing something, or you're not even necessarily doing anything. You're just signaling. You're just putting out a tweet. You're putting out a message of some sort. just purely for the positive feedback you get in return, the clout, the positive feedback, the fans, whatever it is that you get in return, and you're not actually doing anything about it. And I think people get real sensitive about that and start applying that to like any time you're doing like you do one of these things, and as you said, you do something, but you're not doing enough. Like people start blurring that line of like virtue signaling where you're not doing anything and just doing it for the clout, and start applying that to any time you're not doing absolutely everything and saying that's virtue signaling as well, right? And I think that doesn't make any sense.
So I'm pretty worked up right now about the news yesterday coming out of the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade in general, which I genuinely don't think we should talk about too much, if at all. But I feel like these are kind of interlinked in my head right now. So forgive me for a second, or skip to the next timestamp. I feel more and more strongly every day that the idea of virtue signaling and its appearance in online discussions like Reddit, like Twitter, is such a fucking toxic, alt-right, Republican-fueled idea to tear down stuff. And I might just have a lot of visceral right now at the color red and anybody from that ideology, because I'm very upset about the current state of America. And I might be linking those a little bit too closely, but virtue signaling is something that, when used as a weapon by people, which I think is like oftentimes disingenuous, it gets me a little hot. I think that's the lightest way I can say it.
I think we mostly agree in that regard. So, I mean, would you agree that there are people who do like legitimate virtue signal?
Yes,
that,
which
like, legitimately just don't do anything and just put out fake messages just to be able to get positive results out of it.
Which, like all things, is like a core nugget of the problem, because when someone's like, virtue signaling, like it's not a non-existent problem. It does happen, but I think that it is happening in very small, limited scope compared to what people claims it happens, which is all the time across the board for everything that could even be received as positive.
It also posits the idea that you know the exact amount of things that person is doing. So let's say I just tweet out, I am for gay rights, right? And then that's all I do. I just tweet that out. And then people could accuse me of virtue signaling, but you have no idea what I've done personally to help in that regard. You don't know if I've like ever gone to any marches, or if I've ever donated any money, or spent any volunteer hours or anything like that. So when you call it virtue signaling, it also is like, at least from my definition of it, which means basically that you don't do anything and you're just doing it purely out of that. You don't know the person well enough to be able to call it. So it does call into question, like, how do you know anybody is really virtue signaling in the first place?
But it's fucked up, because even if you tweeted something like that, or like, trans rights or human rights, or pick whatever, phrase or slogan you want that could be seen as like progressive or social justice, the fact that you are saying it publicly on a platform that you have with a lot of people following it and condoning and accepting it is an act in and of itself.
Sure.
So...
actually, I was thinking about tweeting out something like this specifically. Did you hear about what happened at Smash, at a recent Smash tournament?
No.
So there are some transgender players in the Smash scene, and at a recent tournament called Pound, the production / commentators got the wrong pronouns for some players, and it became probably more of a controversy than it needed to be. I think it was pretty clear it was just like an accident and nothing intentional and that sort of thing. And so, I think the CEO, whatever, Gimmer, he put out like a statement about like, hey, here's what we're going to do to fix things and stuff like that. And I thought about like just tweeting out like, hey, if you have a preferred, if you're transgender or something like that, if you have a preferred pronoun as a Dota player and you want that, then, feel free to let me know. And I thought about just putting that out there, just because I was like, well, I don't know any, like, I don't specifically know any transgender Dota pro players, but it's like, I don't know a whole lot of their personal lives in general, So, like, how could I really know? So, I thought about tweeting out something like that, but I don't know. It was just something.
Dude, but that would be virtue signaling. Probably you don't actually care. You just want to write. You just want to get those tweet likes, don't you, buddy?
True. And it's also like, well, if somebody does want to do that, I feel like the thing is that if somebody, the act of doing that, like if somebody does respond to me and say, okay, you use this pronoun for me, I feel like that is them coming out very publicly at that point in time.
They'll get flamed.
Yeah. They'll definitely probably get some negative results from. Also, there might be some trolling, some fucking. I mean, after what just happened, I wouldn't put it beyond any fucking Dota player to be like, yeah, please refer to me as she, her, and then I go on to do that. And I was just like, there's too many, like, I can't trust the Dota player base to be mature enough about this, That's basically what I ended on.
You're going to get a Twitter notification from Demon that says, like, I'm an attack helicopter. And then you're going to throw your phone across there and be like, why are you still here?
Yeah. So. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the thing that happened recently. And it got me thinking about what to do about that for the Dota scene. But, as it stands right now, I don't believe any Dota players have. I also thought about this. Considering the sheer number of Dota players, we have to have some gay Dota players. Some pro-gay Dota players, right? The stats are just in the favor of that. There's so many of them, right? But we don't actually have anybody who's openly gay in that regard, right?
I think that's true, but I'm only saying that because I don't know. And I'm assuming that if there was someone who was a bit more prominent, like, we would probably know. But, like, even with behind-the-scenes knowledge, I don't think there's anybody who stands out.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, therefore, like, I feel like that means very likely there are some closeted Dota players, or at least, like, they aren't willing to be public about it. Which totally understand if you don't want to be public about it, no matter what. It's like, I get, like, your business is your business. I'm pretty private about some things about me as well. So it's like, I get it. But it also makes me wonder, just like, how many people, if there are any Dota players out there who just haven't said anything because they're afraid of the feedback that they would get,
That's almost certainly the case. I think you're right if you're looking at it from, like, a mathematics perspective. Even if it's a small subset.
Yeah, just compared to, like, some other scenes, I'm just like, okay, like, we surely have some people in our scene, and so it just very likely means that they don't feel like it's friendly enough to be honest about themselves.
Yeah, there's probably a bunch of reasons, shame. But that's a big one.
Yeah.
This was an episode that I would say skews heavier.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. We little bit. Sorry, all that happened. Want to round it out with a question from patreon.com/sidepoll. When I get this episode out, by the way, for all the patrons, 1, thank you. 2, there'll be a new post going up to refresh the questions for the month of May. So also thank you for that. And if you would like to ask a question, it's just a $5 Patreon tier. Patreon.com/sidepoll. You can support us. We get more of a cut than, like, a Twitch sub, and it allows Cap and me to have dinner a couple nights a week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Question for this week. Kenneth Alford, who was one of my longtime viewers and subs, at what point should talent be expected to live near DPC studios? Surely at some point it becomes more cost efficient for the studios and healthier for the casters to have normal commute. Can't be fun or cheap to live in hotels for half of the year. So yeah, it's actually kind of, I would say, like, if there was like maybe like 4 less weeks in a year, I would say, this question's a little ridiculous. But 3 seasons, 6 weeks each. Let's say 6.5, closer to 7 if you're doing you're flying in maybe a day or two beforehand and you have tiebreakers. So 7 weeks times three, 21 weeks. I mean, just off of the fact that I know there are talent, myself included, who would not be able to work a third season because of the Schengen days involved. Basically, if you don't know how the U.S. or not U.S., but there are some general visas when it comes to going into Europe for periods of time. And it's referred to this area as the Schengen area. It's a part of Europe. Basically, you can be there as so let's say, I know U.S. citizen is part of it. Canada is probably part of it. I know like Mira she has to abide by Schengen days as well. So it's probably like a pretty broad plethora of places. Basically, you can go to Europe, but you can only stay there for 90 days out of 180. So basically, you can't be over there 50% of the time. So my Schengen days, I would not be able to work this major and the third season of the DPC without a specific visa. My current setup, just what allows me to go to Europe, I would run out of days if I went there for both the major and the third season.
My assumption is that visa costs money for your employer.
Yeah, I would have to get some sort of work visa. And that would cost ESL money and time, paperwork, and all that kind of stuff. So that is an issue. So that is just an example. It basically means I've spent over 50% of my time in Europe. So it does call into question, like, at what point is it just like better to like be there? And I would agree with that if that was the case. If we had longer than year-long contracts for the DPC. The problem is with Valve is that you just don't really know what you're getting. So if Valve signed a contract with ESL for the next 5 years of the DPC, and ESL then in turn signed a contract with me for the next 5 years of that DPC, then yeah, it would be in consideration to be like, okay, do I just move to Sweden at that point in time? Would it just be easier for me to move to Sweden and for them to get me some sort of visa as a contractor, or maybe they even hire me straight up, and I become an employee of ESL or Dream League? But
kind of like what Blizzard or Riot would do.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is though is that these things are just year to year. So Valve determines who the people are, the tournament organizers are for the regions for the year of the DPC, but I don't think there's any information about the following year.
Yeah, I think if I'm to understand what you're saying and simplify it, basically there's too much uncertainty from Valve, even season to season sometimes, to bring or hire people like that, because the tournament organizers don't really know. But in a perfect world, yes, but we're like ESL cannot be held at the whims of Valve for more than 3 months at a time.
Yeah. So that is a big reason why you won't see something like that. But it does mean that they have, like, for example, they bring in Wagamama every Saturday. They have him take an overnight train every Friday night, shows up, works on Saturday, takes an overnight train back Saturday night to Sunday. And he does that every week because they need like one extra person on Saturdays, because Saturday is the longest day of the broadcast. So they pay him they pay him for that day, and they pay him a half travel day on the either side. So that's just like one example of like proximity being important, I guess.
it's nice from production standpoint to be like, oh shit, like, you know, if BTS ever really needed to and you're available, they have like a Cap's an hour away, break glass situation, right? Like it's nice to have that.
Yeah. Chances are, if I don't end up doing anything full time for the third season, I'll probably do a little bit of work with BTS here or there. So simply because I'm nearby. And depending on the current situation, I might try and make that full time next year, just because not getting hired for the third season, it's like, for this season, it's like, I don't want to do that again. So I want full time work. I want to be hired for all the seasons.
Make the bread, homie.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you this week. Thank you again, everybody on Patreon. Thank you to everybody who's in the Discord chatting about the episode and going, it's Tuesday, and then I go, Cap's sick, or I'm working, or whatever.
We're late this time because my voice literally was not working yesterday. You can still kind of tell it's a little off, but yesterday was not working at all.
A little bit, but both of us are very active actually in Cap's Discord. If you want to join, there are links all over the place for it. We'll put one in the episode description. So come say hi and tell us your favorite part of the show, or why we're just virtue cycling cucks.
Or play Wordle. You could play Wordle.
Have you done the Wordle that's actually like for songs, where they just play like the first second of a song and then it gets?
No, I'd be terrible at that.
Oh, what's Hurdle? Not like you're jumping over it, but herd, like HEARDLE. Hurdle. Wordle for music. Check it out.
Cute.